Of the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Happy Monday to each and every one of you. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to join us on Open Line Monday. We talk apologetics on Monday with our host, Mr. John Martignoni. If you've got a question for John, the number's 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. If you're outside the United States and Canada, your number is 1-205-271-2985, and we will put you straight to the front of the line at 1-205-271-2985, or you can send us an email, openline@ewtn.com, with any of your questions about apologetics, more specifically scriptural apologetics. I'm Jack Williams. Elena Rodriguez produces the program. Your call screener is Mr. Matt Gubensky, and our host, as he is every Monday, full of turkey and pecan, or pecan if you prefer, pie. Mr. John Martignoni, how was Huntsville? I'm assuming you went to Huntsville.
I did. Huntsville was very nice. Beautiful spring day and spring days in November while I was up there. So it was just, family was good.
And I'm sure the cornucopia was open.
It was, it was awesome. And like you said, I am full of pecan pie.
I noticed you're wearing some clothes that I don't recognize. Are these your fat clothes?
Actually, no. I had a meeting this morning with a principal at a school and a couple of coaches, and so I thought I would dress up to.
I wouldn't have blamed you for wearing a little more accommodating clothing after the weekends.
Actually, I only gained maybe a pound.
Okay, I'm a little alarmed that you would monitor it that closely.
Well, no. I've been trying to lose some weight to get down to a particular weight.
You're getting back to your playing weight?
Exactly. So I've been keeping track of it the last several weeks, lost several pounds actually, and have a goal in mind. And so I thought after this extended weekend that I was going to come back and go, oh man, I blew this. But the scale was very kind to me.
Well, good job out of you. Let's tackle a couple emails here. Steve Wall writes in, are there any New Testament quotes that be shown to be uniquely from the deuterocanonical books that can be used in apologetics? Not like Matthew 4:4 and Luke 4:4 that come from wisdom, but could also come from Deuteronomy. So something specifically from the deuterocanonical books.
Well, okay, there are a few. As far as I know, there is no direct quote from any of the deuterocanonical books, or what the Protestants would call the apocryphal books, that Catholics have in their Old Testament that are not in the Protestant Bible, that Martin Luther basically threw out of the Bible based on his authority. However, there are things that can be directly or indirectly inferred that they came from the deuterocanonical books. For example, you talk about Matthew 4:4. Well, that could be coming from wisdom. Matthew 4:15. Let me read that one real quick. This is, I put a few together. The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, toward the sea across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. That phrase, Galilee of the Gentiles. Well, we find the exact same phrase, 1 Maccabees 5:15. I haven't found it anywhere. I haven't really looked that hard, but I haven't seen it anywhere else. So that's a phrase in Matthew 4:15 that seems to be from 1 Maccabees 5:15. One that I really like that it's very close is in Matthew 7:12. You're all familiar with this. It says, so whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them. The golden rule, right? Well, If we look in Tobit, chapter 4, verse 15, says, where is it? And what you hate, do not do to anyone. It's basically the same principle, except kind of in the negative version of it. So you can make a case that, hey, Jesus has Tobit 4:15 in mind when he's handing out the golden rule in Matthew 7. Then you have in Hebrews 12 this story of a woman with her 7 sons. That's from what, second Maccabees, first or second Maccabees, the story of a woman whose 7 sons were tortured in front of her because they would not defile the dietary laws and eat things that were forbidden by God for the Jews to eat. And so they were all killed one by one in front of her. And so that story is found in Hebrews, but it's from first or second Maccabees, one of those two. I don't have the exact verse in front of me. So there are a lot of things that are in the New Testament that can be sometimes directly, but not a quote per se, but very close to the same thing found in the deuterocanonical books, and many, many more that can be indirectly inferred as coming from the deuterocanonical books, but not a direct quote.
We have an email from Rudy who wants to know, can you help clarify why you say, quote-unquote, so-called gay Catholics? Can you be both Catholic and gay at the same time? Can a Catholic bishop or priest be at the same time gay? I ask because if bishops and priests are not allowed to be married, how could the church accept them as homosexual, which is worse than to be married to a woman? I'm a cradle Catholic, but I'm asking so that I can explain to a Protestant brother. Best regards, Rudy.
Okay. Well, you've probably heard this from other people because I've never said so-called gay Catholics because I don't use the term gay Catholic. I've said so-called same-sex marriage, quote-unquote, or homosexual marriage, quote-unquote, because there is no such thing as a same-sex marriage or a homosexual marriage. The thing is I don't like using the word gay because there's really no such thing as a gay person, that the person is, that's what identifies him, is that they have a same-sex attraction. There are people, male and female, there are persons, male and female, who have a disordered attraction in the sense that they have an attraction to members of the same sex. So that does not necessarily make them a homosexual person, although that phrase is used in the catechism. Just like it doesn't make them a gay person. They're not a person based on their sexual attraction. They're a person, created in the image and likeness of God, but they're a person that has, in this instance, a disordered attraction. Just like a pedophile is not a pedophile person. They are a person with a disordered attraction for young boys or young girls. So someone who is homosexual, I prefer they have SSA, same-sex attraction, but they are a person made in the image and likeness of God. They simply happen to have a disorder in one of their attractions, and in this case, the attraction to members of a sexual attraction to members of the same sex. So that's why I will use the quote-unquote when I'm talking about same-sex marriage, quote-unquote.
If you've got a question for John Martignoni, the number is 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. Straight ahead, we'll talk to Jacqueline in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we've got plenty of time for your calls on an Open Line Monday with John Martignoni.
I see God as a trusting Father, a Father who really cares for me, is guiding me in His providence, one who really has me wrapped in His love so that I don't need to worry about anything as I go through my day-to-day life.
Without God, I'm nothing. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie is a fresh look on life through the eyes of faith, love, and mercy.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Weekdays, noon and midnight Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Podcasts of Open Line are available within 24 hours of live broadcast. Go to EWTN.com and click on Multimedia.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel.
Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN.
Visit today.
Hi, this is Father Mitch Pacwa. You're listening to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Be sure to like EWTN on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/EWTN Radio Network. To the phones we go. Our leadoff hitter today is Jacqueline in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Jacqueline, thanks for waiting. You're on with John Martignoni.
Hello. My question is, as a recent convert to Catholicism, how should I approach friends or Protestant friends or family who want me to continue going to church with them?
Well, what you can do is tell them, say, look, I'm Catholic now. I go to the Catholic Mass, and if on occasion you would like to go to the Protestant service, that's all right. But what you need to do, you whatever. Let's say you're going to go on a Sunday morning. You need to either that evening, Sunday evening, or the Vigil Mass on Saturday. You need to go to Mass that weekend, and then go to the Protestant service. But if someone says, "Hey, come with me to such and such," say, "Well, okay, I tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I'll come this weekend to your church service, again, either after going to the Catholic Mass or before, or going to the Catholic Mass later that evening. If next weekend you'll come with me to the Catholic Mass." And a lot of them are going to not want to do that. And so they'll stop asking you to come to their church service if they know that, hey, that's going to entail them having to go to the Catholic Mass. But if you'd ask about them coming to the Catholic Mass and they say yes, then you need to bone up on, hey, what's the Mass all about? And there are books out there, The Bible and the Mass, I think by Father Stravinskas. There's a book by Tom Nash, who's an employee here for a long time, called, I think it's The Catholic Mass in the Bible or something along those lines. You can find that online. So, it's a very good book. I'm actually in the process of reading that right now. And so, is it Worthy is the Lamb? Okay, Worthy is the Lamb by Tom Nash. You sure it's not about the Catholic Mass? Look and see if there's one on the Catholic Mass, too. Anyway, Tom Nash, Nash, if you look that up in a book about the Mass, it's very, very good. It's not for theologians, it's for everyone. So again, if you're going to go to a Protestant service, you ask the person who's invited you, say, I'll go this weekend with you. If you'll come next weekend or the first weekend you're able to Catholic Mass with me, and then I guarantee you the number of invitations you get will go down. But if you get somebody who says okay, then be prepared to answer questions. And just always remember, if they ask you a question you can't answer, say, that's a good question. I'll I'll look that up and get back to you. The book I'm thinking of is called, thank you to our producer, Elena, always on the ball back there behind the glass, The Biblical Roots of the Mass by Tom Nash. And I know you can find that online, The Biblical Roots of the Mass by Tom Nash.
Thanks so much for that phone call, Jacqueline. That opens up a line for you at 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. If you're outside the United States and Canada, your number is 1-205-271-2985. That's 1-205-271-2985. Or you can send us an email, openline@ewtn.com.
And Jack, I wanted to go back to one of the emails we had in the opening segment. I was looking over it after when we went to the break, and I realized I didn't quite answer the full question. It said, can you be gay and a Catholic priest? Well, you can be a Catholic priest and have a same-sex attraction. You cannot be a Catholic priest and be actively involved in same-sex relations. That's a no-no. I mean, you can be theoretically, but you should not be. It's a grave, grave moral evil. And it's for that reason, and the fact that a same-sex attraction is a disordered attraction is why the church has recommended that when a bishop is considering someone to a candidate for the seminary for their diocese or the head of a religious order for their order, if there is a deep-seated same-sex attraction, then that would disqualify that person because this is a disorder. And so they should not be accepted into the seminary. If there was, say, a same-sex attraction for a portion of that person's life, and it was something they grew out of, they matured out of, let's say maybe they were 14 or 15 and they thought they liked another guy for a little while, but then after a year or so they realized, no, I really do like girls. Well, that's not a deep-seated attraction. That's confusion that can occur particularly in the teen years. So that would not necessarily disqualify one for the seminary, but a deep-seated attraction would. So, yes, technically you can have a same-sex attraction and be a Catholic priest, but it's something that probably should not happen.
Next we go to Mark in Muskegon, Michigan, listening on Holy Family Radio, AM 1140. Mark, thanks for waiting. You're on with John Martignoni.
Hi, thank you. I have a question regarding the piercing of Christ's hands, and I think it really was his wrist where they were pierced, and all the art and crucifixes and everything showed in the hands, and as far as I can tell, it doesn't look like that's correct. And then also kind of like a proof, and it may have been from the Psalms, I'm not sure, is about when they have pierced his hands and feet and numbered all his bones. And I'm a convert about less than 2 years, and something's missing here, I think.
What, the fact that they said pierced his hands, or that they counting all of his bones, or both?
No, the fact that his hands weren't pierced, it was his wrists.
Okay, well, number one, we don't know exactly for sure whether hand or wrist, but it's actually possible to pierce both the hand and the wrist. If you fold your wrist or your hand at a 90-degree angle to your wrist and you put a nail through your palm, it would go through your palm and through your wrist as well. Furthermore, you could make a case that if you're putting a nail through the base of the hand, right where the hand and wrist connect, and it's a big honking nail, because you don't have just some little tiny nail that's holding up a body that weighs, 150, 160 pounds or possibly more, because If the Shroud of Turin is indeed Jesus' burial cloth, which I believe it is, it seemed Jesus was a rather tall man for his time, so it could have been 180, 190 pounds. So these aren't little bitty nails. So if you put a nail in right at the conjunction of the hand and the wrist, then it could literally pierce both your hand and your wrist. Third thing to consider is, people weren't necessarily being, biologically specific. If they said the hand for the Hebrew could have meant the wrist on up to the tip of your middle finger. Who knows exactly? It's like saying, hey, the sun came up this morning at 5:30 a.m. Well, the sun didn't actually come up. The earth rotated until a certain part of the earth saw the sun at a particular time. So we quite often use imprecise language that if you took it just literalistically and said that's an absolute, the sun came up well, then you've got problems, because you're not allowing for idioms of speech. You're not allowing for phrases that everybody in the culture and using that language at that time knows what you mean, but it's not very precise language, either scientifically or biologically, etc. So any of those things could be the case when it says they pierced his hands, when it actually could have been his wrist. Again, you can do both if you really wanted to. And depending on how they laid him out on the cross, how they had his hands, very easily could have pierced his hands and his wrist at the same time. Does that help answer your question?
Father Pio.
What?
What about Padre Pio, when he, in everything else you see where it's nailed in the palm? Is that just like a little artistic license, maybe? Because if you put a nail in the palm and hung a man, it would come off.
Right, but if you put a nail through the palm, through the wrist, it wouldn't come off.
Okay, then why did Padre Pio have it in his palm but not his wrist?
Well, because I couldn't tell you. That's where you've got to take it to God and ask God. People say the hands, he was pierced in his hands and feet. Well, so if you're gonna, if he was bleeding from his wrist, he would have bled out. That could be one reason. What do you do when you kill yourself? A lot of people slit their wrists. So if he had holes in his actual wrist, Padre Pio and the other stigmatists, St. Francis and others, very well could have killed him. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. You'll have to ask God on that one, because there's a lot of things that God does that we don't know why he does it. But again, it could just be a matter of imprecise language that we use all the time to describe all sorts of things. I went to the Alabama football game. They played LSU. There were 1 million people there. Were there 1 million people there? No. It was just a jam-packed stadium. So again, language is not always as precise as we want to make it out to be if we read the Bible in a literalist, fundamentalist way.
You hear a lot of scholars, really in a lot of areas, but especially, biblical scholars, theologians, these people that are such learned people, and they'll tell you that the more they learn, the more they realize how much they have to take in faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just, you've got reason, logic, etc., can only take you so far. I tell people think, if you believe because of faith, then it's not, you're not using your head. It's blind faith. No, the Catholic faith is not blind faith. Why? Because we have evidence of the things that we believe. It's just that there are some things about an infinite God that a finite mind cannot wrap itself around. And so our reason can only take us so far. There are times where our faith has to take us the rest of the way.
We've still got time for your phone calls at 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. If you're outside the United States, we'd love to hear from you. 1-205-271-2985. Open Line Monday with John Martignoni.
For a complete list of the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network AM and FM stations across America, go to EWTN.com. Look for the radio pull-down menu and select AM/FM stations. The list is updated regularly, so visit often. Again, go to EWTN.com. Look for the radio pull-down menu and select AM/FM stations. Also at EWTN.com, you'll find out how to listen to us on the web, on shortwave, and in some countries on satellite. You'll find it all on EWTN.com.
60 Seconds with Mother Angelica.
You know, you can be too generous. For example, if a man comes home with his paycheck and say he's just got $100, he's got 5 children, he's got rent, gas, and electric to pay, and he sees a poor man there, and he gives him the whole $100. And you say, oh, God's going to reward him. But see, the gas and electric company aren't going to think that way. That man was too generous. Now you say, well, how could he be too generous? He has his family to think about. He has his rent to pay. These are just debts and just obligations. Now he could have given part of that, but to throw away all of it is to use a virtue to an excess. Now you can do that with virtues. You can do that with any good thing.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
This is Al Kresta, host of Kresta in the Afternoon, and Kresta in the Afternoon looks at all of life through the lens of Scripture and the teaching of the Catholic Church. Church teaching is the light by which we view the world, and so we'll explore everything, from abortion to Hollywood, and from the First Amendment to the United Nations, and everything in between. Following St. Paul, we're seeking transformation through the renewing of our minds. So that's Kresta in the Afternoon with me, Al Kresta, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
1-800-585-9396 is our toll-free number. A couple lines open for you right now for the back half of the program. 1-800-585-9396. Jump on the line now with your question for John Martignoni. Tonight on the Journey Home with Marcus Grodi, Marcus welcomes Brandon Sheard. Tonight, 8:30 Eastern, he'll talk about his story and his trip into the Catholic Church. And tomorrow night on Mother Angelica Live Classics, her topic, what does it mean to know Jesus? That's tomorrow, 8 Eastern, on EWTN Television. We've got an email that I get a kick out of because our lovely and talented producer, Elena Rodriguez, has attached 2 photos to this email. That makes for good radio. And Mary Ann writes, and she says, I'm in South Africa, and this past weekend we celebrated the centenary birth of our late Archbishop Dennis Hurley, in whose honor we have built a parish. One of the events planned was the world's religions in concert. Now, here's my question. In order for this to take place, the cathedral was desecrated because in the sanctuary we had a stage built which covered the altar, tabernacle, crucifix, and the entire sanctuary. Should this have happened, yes, the Blessed Sacrament was removed, but why must we do this? No Muslim, Jew, Hindu, or Buddhist would allow such a sacrilege to take place. Please let me know. That's Mary Ann in South Africa.
Well, Mary Ann, I don't know if that would, since the Eucharist was removed, I don't know if that would officially qualify as desecration. It might. I'm not saying it doesn't.
You're not a canon architect?
Yeah, I'm not a canon architect. Canon law, liturgy, those things. Colin Donovan would be better suited to be able to say whether that was an actual desecration, because usually the desecration is that word is when you're talking about the host. But the host was removed, the Blessed Sacrament was removed. However, it's still, I think I would agree with you in what you're saying is that it's problematic. If it's not a desecration, it's problematic because you're right. the the Jewish people, I don't know that they would allow Catholics in to, put a crucifix in or whatever, to build a stage to do a Catholic concert or a Catholic/Jewish concert, or and I know Muslims definitely would not. And many Protestants, Baptists wouldn't allow it. A lot of evangelicals I know wouldn't allow it. There are some that would, but the fact of the matter is you can't, you don't need to do things that seem to be watering down your faith or the appeal of your faith. If you're saying, hey, it's an ecumenical event, and so let's do something where we have all these different religions in concert, world religions in concert, you said it was, do that in a parish hall. Do that in some other building other than the main sanctuary. I'm not saying don't do these events, but do them in a place where it looks like, hey, no, this is a special place reserved especially for the Mass, for the Eucharist, for receiving the Blessed Sacrament, and so forth and so on. So, but again, whether it was a desecration, I couldn't say, but I think the general gist of your email is why do we need to do these things? And I'm kind of with you that, well, we don't, at least not in the sanctuary. You can find a better place to hold an ecumenical conference or concert than that.
1-800-585-9396 is the toll-free number to talk to apologist John Martignoni. That's the number Alan used in Canada. Alan, you're on with John Martignoni.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Doing fine, Alan. How are you?
Oh, great. I just love listening to your these Catholic channels. It's so rich. I can't put in words how rich this is. It's amazing.
Well, good. We're glad you enjoy it.
Is as we receive the Holy Eucharist, I know with all my heart that I was always a Catholic, but I became really born again maybe about 25 years ago or so. Anyway, when we receive the Holy Communion, this is really Jesus' true presence, right?
Yes.
And what I want to ask is, I know Jesus lives in our hearts because that's by faith. We know when we accept him as our Lord and Savior, he lives within our hearts. So I believe that Jesus is more present in the Eucharist than he is living in our hearts. That was my question.
All right. Yes, what you just said is absolutely correct. Jesus is, as long as we're in a state of grace, Jesus lives in our hearts, our bodies, our temples of the Holy Spirit, but he is present in the Eucharist in a way that is par excellence, body, blood, soul, and divinity. He is not present in our hearts in body and blood. He has a presence there. His divinity, his soul or divinity, in a sense you could say, would be there, but he is not physically present in our hearts the way he is physically present in the Eucharist. So he is there in the Eucharist in a way that is different than anything else that we experience here on earth. And people say, wherever two or three of you are gathered together, there I am in your midst. Yes, he is. He is present there. But he is present in a way that is different and more full,
substantial.
More substantial, thank you, than he is in any other way. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks very much. I really thought I knew that, but my wife said you should call them just to make sure, because I love the shows, these Catholic channel shows, and it's just amazing. The Holy Spirit is really working through you guys, and I'll tell you, just keep up the good work.
Thank you, Alan. We appreciate the compliments.
You're in all our prayers. God bless you.
Thank you, and rest assured that you're in ours as well, Alan. Thanks so much for that phone call. 1-800-585-9396 is our toll-free number. Tim in Elbow Lake, Minnesota. There's a name for a town for you. He writes in and he says, "Good afternoon. I was hoping you could explain Luke chapter 19, verses 11 through 28. Jesus is telling a parable, but I am not sure what he's trying to point out. Can you help Tim out there?"
Okay. Luke chapter 19, verses 11 and 28. Basically, it's the parable of the talents that you find in Matthew 25. It's just that it has a few extra details in it, and that's all. And basically, he goes on to say this person is appointed, let's see, a nobleman went into a far country to receive kingly power and then return. And calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 pounds and said to them, "Trade with these till I come." But the citizens hated him and sent an embassy after him, saying, "We do not want this man to reign over us." Well, if the nobleman is symbolic of Jesus, a representative of Jesus, who is it that hates him? It's sinners, people who want to do what they want to do, and they don't want anyone telling them, no, that's a sin that you're doing, whether it be involved in adultery, fornication, same-sex relations, lying, cheating, stealing, murder, etc. They don't want a nobleman over them. So anyway, he calls his servants, gives them all 10 pounds, and some of them trade. And the first came to him, "Lord, your pound has made 10 pounds more." He said, "Well done, good, faithful servant. Because you've been faithful in very little, you shall have authority over 10 cities. The second came, saying, "Lord, your pound has made 5 pounds." He said, "Then you're over 5 cities. Then another came, said, "Lord, here's your pound, which I kept laid away in a napkin." Well, in the parable of the talents, he buried it. "For I was afraid of you, because you are a severe man. You take up what you did not lay down, you reap what you did not sow." So what happens? Well, the nobleman, the master, gets angry. He says, "Take the pound from him and give it to the one who has 10 pounds. And I tell you that to everyone who has will more be given, but from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. But as for these enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, bring them here and slay them before me." Woo, pretty harsh. None of this, we don't want to hurt their self-esteem going on in this parable. Basically, again, what's going on, Jesus has done all that he needs to do for our salvation. He's paid the price. And so he gives us these talents. He gives us this grace that we receive, that he merited for us by his death on the cross and his resurrection, and that we receive through his body, particularly through his sacraments that we receive in the church. What do we do with this grace? Is it salvation by faith alone? Hey, Jesus gave us this gift, and that's, all we need to do is bury it or just lay it in the napkin and wait for them to come back and say, "Hey, here's what you gave me. I'm giving it back to you." No, what the parable's telling us is we have to have a response to Jesus' free gift. He gave these pounds to his servants freely and said, do something with them, just like he's telling us. Do something with the gift you've been given. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, forgive the sins of those who've sinned against you, keep the commandments, eat my body, drink my blood. All these things he's told us we need to do in response to his free gift. Well, the good servants did them, and they were given authority over more things than what they already had. The bad servant didn't do anything with what he had been given, and he ends up not faring too well when the master returns, which is the return of Christ at the end of time. If you haven't done much with what he has given you, the free gift that he has given you, if you haven't taken it and shared it with others, if you haven't made interest on it, then you could be in a world of hurt when judgment time comes.
We've still got time for your phone calls at 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. Open line Monday with apologist John Martignoni.
Tomorrow on EWTN Radio, Open Line host Barbara McWiggin takes all your calls on pro-life issues, 3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
When Pope John Paul II landed in Washington, D.C. and was greeted by then-President Reagan, the president said, "Welcome to the land of the free." And John Paul II said, "Free, yes, but free for what? Free for what?" It seems today that we define freedom as the ability to do whatever you want. Of course, doing whatever we feel like doing in the moral realm doesn't necessarily lead to freedom, but often leads to vice. Vice. That's the perfect word for it. It's a destructive habit that grabs us kind of like a vice grip and doesn't let us go very easily. Don't believe me? Think of your favorite sin. Now try to stop. Genesis 4:7 says, "Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and become its master." You see, freedom isn't the ability to do whatever we want. It's the power to do what's right. And ultimately, true freedom is the power to love. That's the kind of freedom Jesus Christ modeled for us in his life and in his death. And it's the kind of freedom he's inviting us to live in today. I'm Chris Stefanik from reallifecatholic.com.
Making a difference. EWTN Radio.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
We're entering the home stretch on an Open Line Monday with John Martignoni. Next up is Doreen in the great state of Ohio. Doreen, you're on with John Martignoni. Right ahead.
Oh, am I on?
Yeah, go right ahead, Doreen. I'm sorry.
Okay. I wondered why when we say the Apostles' Creed, we say he descended into hell and he rose again from the dead.
Well,
what constitutes that he already did that?
Well, I think it could be a translation issue. It also could be, well, if you count, well, he rose from the dead in terms of, hey, his body's still there, but his soul has risen and had gone into, he went in the spirit to the abode of the dead, and he rose from there. So the dead being the abode of the dead. But I think first and foremost it comes down to a translation issue, and I'm not exactly sure how it translates or what the words are in Latin. I'm not a Latin scholar, or I don't speak Latin, never took it in high school or anything. But I think it's just one of those issues where it's the translation, it doesn't just come perfectly into English from the Latin. It's not that, well, he's already died another time and risen from the dead before. It's not anything along those lines at all. It's just, he rose from the dead. And it just so happens he rose again from the dead, got into the creed somehow. So, again, I think it's a translation issue. But for a perfect or near perfect answer on that, call the language scholar we have here on Wednesday, Father Mitch, and he could probably give you the exact translations and give it to you in several different languages as well.
And several websites also attribute that to the de-evolving of the English language, where we place too much emphasis on the word again than people of previous generations have. So hopefully
it's a linguistic situation or linguistic issue, so it's just, I can't add anything else to that.
Thanks, Doreen, for that phone call. We appreciate it. Tom is next up in Tallahassee, Florida. Tom, what's your question today for John Martignoni?
Hello?
Go ahead, Tom.
Hello? Yeah, I know the Blessed Mother is soon in heaven, but why don't we know about St. Joseph, where his relics are, or anything like that? Where's his burial at?
Well, that's a good question. I would assume he would have been buried somewhere in Nazareth where they lived. But I've also read things where there were traditions that he was actually buried in a cemetery in Jerusalem. But then again, his family home, when they did the census, where did he go? He went to Bethlehem, so possibly buried in Bethlehem as well. I think the fact of the matter is that St. Joseph in his lifetime was not a famous person. So when he was buried, it wasn't like, King David. Everyone knew where King David was buried, or where Isaac or Jacob, way back when, people would have known where their burial sites were for many hundreds of years probably. So St. Joseph in his lifetime was, in essence, in the shadows, in the background. And so when he died, he wasn't a famous personage. And it was only, a number of years later, once Jesus had, died and risen from the dead, and the church came out on Pentecost, etc., that anyone would have paid any attention, anyone outside of Jesus and Mary and the immediate family would have paid any attention or had any interest in where he was buried. And by that time, who knows, maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe they had lost track once, maybe after Mary's Assumption. And, who knows what the reason is, but
where there's some thought among some well-meaning theologians that Joseph may very well have been assumed.
And exactly, there's also that. So, for any number of reasons, there may be. I have never heard or seen of a relic of St. Joseph. Have you?
There was once a relic that was stolen in ancient times, and I don't know all the inner machinations of the situation, but I believe there was thought to be a relic of the ring that was actually given to Mary upon their marriage. But
okay, and there's when Constantinople was sacked during the Fourth Crusade, it is thought that there were a lot of relics that were stolen. And the Crusaders just took them and kept them for themselves. And so there may have been relics of St. Joseph at one time, but they were lost to history. We simply do not know.
That's the definitive answer, is we don't know for sure. Regardless, any of this is all speculation. Thanks so much for the phone call, though, Tom. We'll move now to Houston, Texas. Stephanie, listening on Guadalupe Radio, AM 1430. Thanks for holding, Stephanie. What's your question today for John?
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I was trying to ask, which I don't like to question our Father Lord, but he tells us to forgive 70 times 70 times 70, our worstest enemies, murderers, molesters, anything that could possibly happen, evildoers. But then yet, from the beginning of time, he cursed from Adam and Eve, and we're all still paying for that. And it seems like he didn't forgive. What do we do?
Well, here's the thing, is when someone does harm to you, you can break forgiveness down into two ways. One is, I forgive them in the sense that I do not want them to end up in hell because of what they have done to me. I am hoping and praying that this person will have a conversion and that they will end up in heaven with me. So that's one aspect of the forgiveness. The other aspect is the physical, bodily, that, hey, this person, let's say it's a next-door neighbor. They lied about you or they cheated you. Well, your forgiveness of them does not mean that you have to put yourself back into a position where they can lie about you again or steal from you again, or if someone has physically harmed you, an abusive spouse. Well, your forgiveness of that spouse doesn't mean you have to put yourself back in harm's way and let them physically abuse you again or emotionally abuse you again. That's not part of what it is to forgive. That kind of forgiveness might come after they repent of their sin against you and ask you to forgive them. If someone has lied about me and they don't give a rip, as that I know that they've lied about me because they don't like me and they continue to lie about me, and I forgive them in the sense that I hope they repent. I hope they end up in heaven. But I don't forgive them in the sense in that, hey, I'm not going to stand by and just, put myself out there so it makes it easier for you to lie about me, or you're not going to be my best friend anymore if you were at one time, or a friend at all. So God, in that sense, God forgives. I mean, how many times do we sin? If I started sitting down counting my sins, 7 times 70, give me a week, and God has forgiven me that many times, okay? Now, over the course of my lifetime, God forgives over and over and over again. Yes, we inherited a fallen nature, and that's because of Adam's sin, and you just have to trust that God is just in how he has handled these things. But he gives all of us a chance to rebound from that and in some way, shape, or form find his grace and ask for forgiveness and repent of our sins and come to him and come to salvation. So over the course of time, God forgives us way, 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 way more than we ever forgive anybody else. Does that help you out at all?
Yes, it helps me out a lot. I just know that he's a great father and that he's doing the right thing, and we should never question him because he is the parent, we're the children.
Well, yes, but the thing is, it's okay for the child to question in terms of, hey, why is this? Why I'm not understanding it, but not question in terms of doubt. Question in terms of, I want more information. I want to understand better. I don't fully realize what's going on here. Not, I'm questioning you because I doubt you, but I want to know you better. I want to know more. And like I said earlier in the program, there comes a time where logic and reason can take you only so far, and then faith has to kick in the rest of the way because we're finite human beings with finite minds dealing with an infinite God.
And a curse is really kind of a consequence, and that still holds true today. Even though we can have assurance of forgiveness, there are still consequences in this life to our sin.
Absolutely. It's like if you break a spiritual law, there are consequences, just like if you try to break a physical law. If you try to say, hey, I'm not going to buy this gravity thing and jump off a 10-story building, there are consequences to that. If you have, hey, I'm not going to buy this don't lust thing, there are consequences to that.
Where can they find more of what you do, John?
BibleChristianSociety.com. It's all free, BibleChristianSociety.com. Free talks on CD, MP3 downloads, a free newsletter, all sorts of stuff. Check it out.
On behalf of our host, John Martignoni, our producer, Elena Rodriguez, our call screener, Matt Kavinsky, I'm Jack Williams. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your Monday to join us on Open Line. Back at it tomorrow with our pro-life warrior, Barbara McGuigan, in the house. Until we get together then,